So today I'm going to talk about some ADHD stuff because I'm going to be honest, I kind of forgot to record on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and yesterday, and now it's Sunday. I think we're going to start there. So with that, welcome to Divergence and Divine. My name is WIllspiration, and today the first topic that I want to talk about, because it's like literally in my head, is basically executive dysfunction. So if you guys don't know what executive dysfunction is, basically executive functions are what your brain does when you try to do things like planning or trying to make a list or being able to essentially go from one task to another or be able to even follow through with a task. So an example of that would be like, if I start cleaning my apartment, I'd be able to clean my apartment. I'd be able to vacuum, do the dishes, maybe, mop the little bit of floor that needs mopping because it's not really actually a lot. Wipe the countertops. I have a little glass table that my sister gave me. That's a dining room table, so wiping that down. Doing a little bit of dusting, wiping down this tiny little folding table that I'm using as a desk, and then like dusting the windowsills rather than just like doing one and then like sitting down, doom scrolling on my phone, or getting distracted watching a YouTube video, or getting distracted by music that I'm playing and then I start jamming out to my music, and then being like, oh no, it's like 8 o'clock and I started cleaning at 1 and I only did like 2 things. So, yeah. See, that's kind of what happened with recording this episode. Was I was going to record on Tuesday and then I forgot about it. Then I said I was going to record Wednesday, and then I tried doing some stuff around the apartment, and then I had to go to work, and then I had an appointment with my therapist on Thursday. And then Friday, I just was like, I don't wanna. I guess I just wasn't really in the headspace. And then yesterday, I almost said Friday again. Yesterday, I just kind of was like, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to chill. So I just took my laundry to the laundromat, had them do the laundry for me. And then I just picked that up earlier this morning. So, yay. But basically, that's just an example of executive dysfunction. And it's funny because I was commenting on an Instagram post where someone was talking about whether autistic people should be allowed to drive or not. And in the comments, I listed down how like I myself am able to drive, and I personally feel like the reason being is because I have autism and ADHD, and the way that they interact and coexist kind of negates a lot of like the negative aspects of both of them, especially when it comes to like the sensory issues. Like I do have sensory issues, but they're not debilitating. I know let me word this a little bit more carefully. But basically, autism is a spectrum, right? The things that aren't really considered part of said spectrum are whether you are verbal or not, if you have motor skill issues or not, and that's pretty much about it. Everything else is a spectrum. So a level 1 person could be nonverbal, can be very well at masking, look like they're neurotypical, but even in their 30s, they hear a firework and then they could still just burst into tears because it's so loud and it scares them, right? Because their hearing is so sensitive. But on the same token, you can have like a nonverbal, level 3 autistic person that very well could just actually have these problems, have it be very annoying, not enough to be debilitating, and then vice versa, like, because it's a spectrum in the end of the day. So it's just, it's more common for like level 3 autistic people to be extremely sensitive to everything, and they have a higher chance of being nonverbal and having motor skill issues and needing to be taken care of. But when it comes to like even just sensory issues, it is possible for some to not be as affected. And it's also possible for higher functioning autistics to be equally as affected by sensory issues, to the point where it is debilitating, even if they are level 1 and have like no verbal impairment or very minor or no fine motor skill impairments at all. It's a very complex thing. The way I put it is like, basically it's like spinning a wheel. Like, we have X amount of categories. We are going to spin the wheel, and this wheel is going to tell you how much this enhances this specific sensory ability by, or this determines how much of an issue you're going to have with coordination or something like that. That's why it's kind of like, if it's a spectrum, because like it really just affects people differently. But before my ADHD takes over and I go on a tangent again, let me get back to what I was stating before, which was like how people should be able to drive or not. And I basically listed how autism and ADHD affect me, and that like I'm able to drive just fine. But at the end, I put down how even though the way that they interact is like, it cancels a lot of that stuff out, at the end of the day, I am still very sensitive to touch. So I get scared very easily when I get tapped when I'm not paying attention, especially when I'm like very hyper focused on something. My pain tolerance and pain threshold are so low that even just me bumping myself on something makes me want to cry. So I don't do pain. Like, if I were to ever get into a fight, I would probably take a punch, and then I'd probably start crying from that, because that's how non-existent my pain tolerance and pain threshold is. But at the same time, there's also, I mentioned in this comment about my executive dysfunction. So I put in there about how, because of that, I have really terrible impulsivity, and that I have really bad executive dysfunction. Like, if you were to come into my apartment right now, it's not terrible, but I have just around me right now, I can count, let's see, I literally got like 15 empty water bottles and a small Dunkin' Donuts plastic bottle sitting around me right now. So it's not that bad. I also have a small amount of dishes that I need to wash, and then a couple things on my little counter. But it's not super bad. But I mean, it's still pretty like, it can be cleaner. But it's not like hoarder bad, if that's what you guys are thinking. It's not that bad. Like, I actually do clean. It might take me a couple weeks to get around to like picking up all the water bottles and stuff, but I still throw out my garbage weekly. I still, get rid of my recycling as I fill up like a bag. Unfortunately, my apartment complex doesn't do recycling, so like everything that's recycling also just gets thrown in the trash, sadly. I personally think that a lot of places should recycle, just because, like, a good example is in Germany. I was watching a YouTube short with from this guy that lives in Germany, and he basically, in that short, it's like he's pretending that like he's a foreigner that just moved to Germany, and he's learning all these things. So by using this short, by like, he's basically explaining things that Germany does that he likes or that he might not like. And he's also lived in the US. He lived in the US for a while, I believe, or he might live in the US and used to live in Germany. I don't know. I think he's got dual citizenship. I forget the name of the YouTuber, but he was basically, one thing that they do over there in Germany is that you can recycle your water bottles or any sort of plastic container that has liquid in it. But at most supermarkets, they have a machine that you can put that stuff in, and you can actually get money for it, even if it is, just a little bit of change. But that little bit of change quickly adds up. So like, I could have I could take 5 garbage bags worth of water bottles, and if each one of these water bottles are only like 5 or 10 cents, depending on the state, if they were to make a one flat rate like 15 cents per water bottle, and you put them in that machine, I mean that's a lot of money, like over time. I mean, I gotta do the math right now on my phone, but let's say each bag has about 30 water bottles. That's $4.50, and then we times that by 5 bags. That right there is an easy $22.50. So that's not bad. But again, I'm getting sidetracked. So going back to the main point, it's just kind of like, it's a little bit hard, but like, it's doable, but it requires a lot of effort. So mainly that's why like that would be the only time that I ever take my Adderall, is because I need to stay focused. Which is basically going to bring me to another little side topic, which is basically I can't really take my Adderall at a higher dosage than 5 milligrams, which is very, very low for an adult. But if I do any more than 10 milligrams, like 10 milligrams and up will calm my ADHD. Like 10 calms it enough to the point where it's like, it doesn't cancel out as much of the stuff that I have with my autism, and then my autism becomes more noticeable. Like I become more bothered by changes. I not only do I mask way less, but it's like, it's basically, it's noticeable. It's noticeable, and it gave me a lot of problems at my last job. But I remember when I first started the Adderall, I did 5, and 5 was good. 5 was perfect. It calmed I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It didn't really calm the impulsivity, but it did help with the executive dysfunction. Not a lot, but enough where it became manageable, where like if I was getting distracted, I could be like, focus, and like keep going. Whereas like if I'm not on it, if I'm not on it, then I'm like trying to tell myself to focus, but then I get hit with ADHD paralysis, and then I also get sidetracked and I get distracted. But also, I guess I can't really say that it didn't help with it didn't help with the impulsivity. It did help a little bit, but not a lot. I know, really and truly, I also need to be on anti-anxiety, but Prozac really didn't work that well for me, because I feel like here's the thing about me, and with at least my sense of empathy, is that when I take Prozac, my sense of empathy starts going down. So for me, I always try to be as understanding as possible with people. And then there's also people that I just know that as soon as I meet them and I feel their energy and their vibrations, I can just tell right away that there's something off about them, and I may not necessarily like them. So I might come across a little, I guess, not rude, but I can be a little cold at first. But I always try not to let that get to me, because that person that I just met could have been having a bad day that day, and that's why they feel like that. Me being an onboarding trainer at my work, I've kind of learned that there were some people that came in that were either having a bad day, or they were just, really annoyed because maybe their last job didn't work out because something happened. I know from personal experience, that sometimes jobs can screw you over. So maybe that's what happened. Maybe they were just cautious and they didn't want to, they didn't know what to expect. But then by the end of the week, they were like super chill. Except for like a couple weeks ago, I had a new hire in my onboarding group, and she was very negative, complained all the time, always thought that what she did was right and it wasn't, and she had never worked for the company that I work for. And she was telling her trainers that they were doing everything wrong and the way she was doing it was right. And then after that, she just didn't want to work anymore. So then she basically stood there and watched her trainer work. And I didn't have a radio, so the line lead couldn't radio me so I could come and talk to this trainee. But, I just knew with her, when I saw her and I felt her energy, I was already kind of like, okay, I'm just going to be, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to make her feel welcome because maybe she's having a bad day. And then Wednesday hit and it was nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. And then she went off on me. And then her attitude just got worse and worse from there. So for me, I always try to be understanding and I always try to really kind of feel someone out because maybe, that negativity is just something bad happened, or maybe it's like some sort of trauma, or maybe they're still bothered by something that happened at their last job and they're worried it's going to happen at, here. But 99% of the time, it usually goes away. This was an example of the 1% where it doesn't. But I don't know if she's there or not anymore. But her attitude and her behavior have gotten worse over time. So we'll see what happens to her. I'll update you guys on that situation. But generally speaking, if I was on Prozac and if I was taking my Adderall daily like I'm supposed to, I would have basically felt her energy, mirrored it, gave her attitude back, and I probably would have not made everyone else feel welcome. So that's like, for me, that's why I'm not on Prozac. I'm sure being on any sort of anti-anxiety would really help if I can find one. But I just feel like that because of the fact that it is supposed to help calm, like I think they're called SSRI receptors in your brain, that it just kind of messes with that level of like sympathy and empathy in your brain, because it's like, I feel like for me, a lot of my anxiety comes from being picked on and bullied. So like I always try to be as understanding with people as possible. So by calming a lot of that anxiety down, it's taking away that ability to empathize and sympathize with people. And it makes me feel colder and more just stiff and like I don't care. And maybe it's just like I need to be on a lower dosage. But then I was also on 20 milligrams of Prozac, and the 20 milligrams didn't feel like it did anything. And then 25, it kind of helped. But like in conjunction with the Adderall, it just kind of made it worse. At least for me, because it made the autism stuff even worse. So then they were like, oh, we're going to up you to 40. And then I was up to 50. And I was on 10 milligrams of Adderall. And it was bad. It was really bad. I was just like, I was so much better off on 5 milligrams of Adderall and not being on anti-anxiety medication, because it just seemed like at that point I was just able to deal with my anxiety better. But at the same time, it could just be that I haven't found the right medication yet. But I don't like the idea of having to do trial and error, because I don't want it to affect my ability to function at work, because I don't want it to be like, one of the symptoms is I get more irritated, and, my therapist is like, well, if that happens, you just let me know, and then you just stop taking it, and then we'll make another appointment and put you on something new. But at the same time, depending on what kind of interaction happens, could also cost me my job, because a lot of places just have a zero tolerance policy. So if it were to make me more irritable and I snap on somebody because of like a sensory issue thing, like I was stating earlier, sensory issues for me don't really debilitate me, but they are very annoying. So like my annoyance could probably turn into, anger really quick, and then like I snap on someone and cuss someone out at work, and then all of a sudden that's the end of my job, right? I'm not trying to do that because I need money. So I'm trying to keep my job. So that's my concern about trying new medications, which I think is a very valid reason. But who knows? Maybe at some point I'll actually go on anti-anxiety, and maybe it'll, and maybe it's just the fear talking, and maybe I do find one that works and I can still be empathetic and sympathetic and not have it affect me negatively at all, like how Prozac did. But I guess only time will tell. But for now, I'm just on the 5 milligrams of Adderall, and I only take it when I absolutely need to get stuff done. And I feel like I have a lot of ADHD paralysis, because then that just helps give me the ability to break out of it. It doesn't take it away, but it just kind of helps my brain kind of be able to break it easier than not being on it. I think for me, that's just like, it helps with the executive dysfunction, but no amount of, whiteboards and planners and calendars will really help with setting aside time to do things around the apartment. When it comes to appointments, I'm great. I put those in my phone. I have an alarm set. I'll even set an alarm for that specific day in my phone with my alarms as well. So I get like 2 or 3 alarms so I don't forget. And also I'm just really good about remembering appointments and, what time they are, and, try to get there early because, punctuality is key, as they always say, which I think I take a little too literally sometimes, but that's okay. And it's just kind of, I can't set aside time to clean something if it's not gonna, if I can't get my brain to do something. So it's like the same thing with the impulsivity. Like I can't not, it's like I shouldn't say I can't. It's just very, very difficult to not want to buy something when I see it. And I feel like there needs to be more of a level of understanding with this stuff, because I'm not saying that, okay, I'm going to try to word this without going too much into my personal life per se, but let's just say that I'm just going to give small, brief backstory and try to keep the details as minimal as possible. But my parents divorced when I was 4. At some point, my mom wanted to get me tested. She claims that my dad said no. My dad said that my mom never brought it up. So there's a lot of things that's kind of like hard to believe, but regardless of whatever happened, they didn't have me tested. So the way that I was like raised was basically like being told that I was lazy and that I didn't care and that my impulsivity was going to get the better of me, which, to be honest, it has. I'm not going to lie. When I was 24, I finally had saved up enough money to get a condo, and the condo was like 4 minutes from my dad's house. Well, or my stepmom's house, I guess I should say, because my dad lives with her. And then I discovered gacha games. So I discovered games like Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle and like Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links and other games like that, where you have to try to grind in-game currency, and then it takes too long. So then you're just like, oh, I can spend money to get this in-game currency? Next thing you know, I'm like constantly like overdraft like $200-$300, and I'm freaking out, calling my parents for money because I'm literally gambling it away with no way to get it back, because it's a video game. It's not like going to the slots and you put 20 in and then you win like the jackpot and you get $1,000, and then you gamble it away, and then when you get down to like 100, you just go, okay, that's enough, and then you walk away with 80, or you win the jackpot and then you just stop, right? With gambling, it's just like, ooh, I just turned my 20 into, $1,000. I'm going to keep gambling and try to turn this $1,000 into like $3,000. Rather than just be like, okay, I won the jackpot. I turned that 20 into $1,000. I'm going to leave. Here, it's like doing that, trying to get rare units that are eventually going to get power crept, which power creep is a video game term for a lot of like gacha games where basically, like, new units will come out in a gacha game where they just have better skills, better stats, and it makes like older units from the beginning of the game obsolete because they just don't have the same level of power. That's how they get you. That's how they get your money. But even then, if it wasn't gacha games, it was spending a lot of money on equipment, trying to do YouTube and trying to do like content creation that just didn't end up working. And, I had to sell that stuff to try to get some money back. Eventually, I had to sell the place, and then I got 30 grand for it, and I blew through all 30 grand. And then, yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. Have I learned my lesson? It took like another 4 years after that for me to finally learn my lesson. Do I still do it from time to time? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest. I might be $100 short on my rent. So I have to let my property management know that my rent is gonna be 4 days late. But I don't have to. At least I don't have to beg my parents for money anymore. It's kind of like, oh shoot, I'm gonna be like $50 short on rent. And I have auto payment, so it should go through anyway. But I just stocked up on a little bit of extra stuff so that if the auto pay does go through and I'm like out $100, at least I have enough to make it to, my paycheck for my first paycheck in December and be okay. Plus, I'm going to be going to the weekend shift at my work, so I'm basically getting a $2 increase in my pay, which even after taxes, even if they were to tax like 40% of that $200 that I'm going to get monthly extra now from that, or hell, even if they tax half of it, that's still an extra $100. So, I'll be able to make up the deficit and then build up more savings, and then I'm going to jump up basically 2 positions, which then will be like another $3 or $4 increase. So basically I might be making like another extra couple $100 a month. So like I'll be fine, so I'm not too worried about it. I know my parents would be like yelling at me right now, but I have a plan. I'm not, it's improved a lot, not probably to what my parents would want it to be, but it is a lot better than it was before. I will say that. A lot better than before. But at the end of the day, like just executive dysfunction and like ADHD as a whole, if you guys haven't been able to tell from like episode 1 and like so far in this episode, getting distracted is a huge thing about ADHD that's like really annoying, and I feel like is a key contributor to executive dysfunction. So that's why all of these like podcasts are going to go from like one topic to another. At some point I'm looking to have, people as guests on here, and that'll kind of help me focus more because it'll be like, I'll have questions, and with those questions, I'll be able to stay on topic, or like, even if I kind of get a little bit distracted, at least what it goes into next is still going to revolve around the main key question. Maybe not as much, but I won't stray around from like thought to thought like I do with these episodes that I do by myself. So it'll be nice, But for now, I don't mind, doing this. It also kind of gives you guys an example of like, how the ADHD brain works, how the autistic brain works, or basically how an autistic ADHD, or it's starting to become more popularized on like forums and other websites, is ADHD. So basically you throw a U after the A in ADHD. So you pronounce it like you're pronouncing autism, and then you say, the D, the H, and the D like you do in ADHD, hence ADHD. But yeah, it just kind of shows you like, if I look at my recording right now, there are like 1 to 2 second gaps in between like certain thoughts. So that's kind of a great example. Well, that last one was like half a second. It's like half a second to like 2.5 seconds on average. Occasionally, there might be one where like the thought process takes more like 3 to 5. The ones that are like 3 to 5, I always edit those out so that it's more like one, like within the range of like half a second to like a second and a half. Just because it's like I don't want it to be too jarring. But I mean, that's an example of like the autism, right? Like it's just kind of my brain is finishing a thought and now it's thinking of a new thought. But if I have a thought that the ADHD decides it wants to take and run with, those breaks are going to be more like half a second to a second and a half. And sometimes the thought might actually run for like almost 10 to 15 seconds at a time, pause for like a second or two, and then run like another 10 to 15 seconds nonstop. So I'm just saying, it's not the first time that I've had thoughts where like I've been able to talk for like almost 30 seconds straight and then have to take a really deep, like big breath and then like go for like another 30 seconds and then have to breathe again because like I just keep talking and talking and talking and talking until I run out of air. So yeah, that's like another fun thing about having like the ADHD. So, but I think honestly, it's just like a very interesting thing. And it's funny because like I know the title of this is Divergence and Divine, but like not every episode is going to be, I guess, something relating to both topics. So like this episode is more about neurodivergence, right? I mentioned briefly about energies and vibrations, which is more on the spiritual side of stuff, which is, part of the divine stuff. But, the next episode, which since I'm going to the weekend shift at my work, a lot of these episodes should be going up somewhere between, like, most likely they'll probably go up either on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, just because of all the editing. And I'm probably going to need Tuesday to kind of recoup from working 12 hours, 3 days in a row. So like the first day is going to be recuperating from the burnout, and then Wednesday I'll record, Thursday I'll edit, and then it should probably be up like Thursday afternoon. But, maybe next week's episode is more about spiritualism and the metaphysical side of things, or maybe even like a religious topic. But it's just kind of, it all depends on what I see and like kind of what happens. And I might be like, oh, that's a good idea to talk about today. And sometimes like episode 1, which is kind of an introduction, I might wing it. I might literally just start talking and going on a tangent about something and just kind of let it flow and then label it properly. But I think for me, it's just easier to wing things. But like if something does spark an idea for like an episode, it's also really nice because then I already have an idea of what I want to talk about. So it's just kind of like a great way to, go about doing stuff. And I kind of like it. So if I were to basically give you guys any advice for this episode, if you're neurodivergent, is basically it's okay to get distracted. Don't feel bad about having ADHD paralysis from time to time, like where you have to get something done and it just kind of seems like your body, like your brain just doesn't want to do it. And like you're telling your body to move and your body's like, no, I'm okay with doing nothing right now. And you're like trying to get yourself to move and your brain's like, nah, it's fine. We don't need to do it right away. Don't get yourself worked up about it. Like don't trip yourself about it, because that just really doesn't help. If you feel like you need to be on ADHD meds, like I would say go for it. If you have ADHD, like 100%. If you're ADHD though, like I am, I would just kind of experiment with it, especially if you're already on like anti-anxiety or antidepressants. Just because that could kind of affect your ability to like empathize and sympathize with people. It could also affect your mood as well. So I would just be very careful with that. And I would just experiment. But really and truly, like, if you're not on meds, don't feel bad about it. Like, don't feel bad about having like terrible executive function because, you have, ADHD or autism or both, and like your executive dysfunction is like just like, it just gives you really bad executive dysfunction. Don't beat yourself up about it. You just kind of got to learn to accept that it's a part of you and like not treat yourself like you're a bad person because you can't get yourself to do one task. It takes training, it takes patience, it does take effort to do stuff, but you shouldn't feel like it's the worst thing in the world and that because you can't, clean one day when you really, really want to, and your brain is just telling you no, and you just kind of just sit all day doom scrolling on your phone on a weekend or on a day off of work, that you're the worst person alive because you didn't clean one day. You could wake up the next morning and it may not be as bad and you just run through and clean everything. And then you're just like, wow, why couldn't I do that yesterday? I mean, there's been times where I've done that where it's just like one day I can't do it. And then the next morning, all of a sudden I'm just like, for example, maybe I wanted to clean yesterday on a Saturday and then I wake up Sunday and I just clean like all day and I clean for like 5 hours and I go, wow, why couldn't I do that yesterday like I wanted to? But it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, my brain did it when it was ready to do it and it got done. And that's the important thing. So I think that's like the key takeaway for this episode of this podcast is just be kinder to yourself and just kind of realize that this stuff is just how your brain works. And then instead of being like cruel to yourself and telling yourself that you're lazy and that you're the worst person alive because you can't get yourself to like plan something or, do something that you want to do that day, that it's not the end of the world, and just kind of work on being kinder to yourself. And in the same vein, I guess that's also like saying you got to learn how to love yourself more for you and who you are as a person. You can't let your neurodivergence define who you are because that's just the way your brain works. That's not who you are as a person. So don't ever let that define you as a human being. I think that's my biggest takeaway from all of this. But with that, I am going to wrap up this episode of Divergence and Divine. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure that you leave a like, subscribe if you want to, if you like this and you're interested in more. Hit that bell as well, because that will give you notifications when I post a new episode. And then once this podcast starts getting bigger, I'll start being able to put it like on Spotify and like iTunes and et cetera, on other platforms so you guys can listen to it whenever instead of having to go to YouTube all the time. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week or later this week. I guess it depends. Anyway, bye.